purpose: to question and explain connections between depression and enhance creativity. In my search for a topic, I thought of Emily Dickinson and her lifestyle as a recluse. Dickinson is arguably one of the greatest poets of all time, opening up her soul and emotions with her words. She never intended to have the bulk of her poems published, only giving them to family members, friends, and keeping them to herself. During her most active period of writing, she rarely ventured outside of her home in Amherst, Massachusetts, composing over 1,100 works of loneliness, pain, grief, love, nature, and death. Not until only recently has her reclusiveness and suspicions of mental disorders have been compared to her outpouring of creativity. Today, there are many diagnoses of mental illnesses ranging from phobias and eating disorders to depression and schizophrenia. Using the U.S. Census of 1998, it's estimated that 1 in 5 adults 18 years of age or older suffer from a diagnosed mental disorder, with many sufferers having more than one at a time. In the 50s and 60s, depression was divided into two categories: endogenous and neurotic. Endogenous depression means the illness comes from within the body, perhaps inherited or simply comes from out of nowhere. Neurotic depression is diagnosed if there is a clear, physical reason for being diagnosed, such as a death of a family member or other strong emotional event. If left untreated, depression can lead to ruined relationships, occupational problems, drug and alcohol addictions, troubles with overcoming other illnesses, and even play a factor in a person's death, such as suicide. In the time of Emily Dickinson, her life coincided with the Civil War, which brought about enormous amounts of loss of life and political transformations, undoubtedly a stressful time in every American's life. She dealt with broken friendships, the stresses of taking care of her sick mother, and the sudden death of her father are understandably valid reasons for her isolation. It is known that her reclusiveness happened over a period of years and gradually became worse. In most cases of depression, there are a combination of factors which can lead to a person's depressive state of mind. Included are psychological, environmental, and hereditary factors, all of which played a role in Dickinson's lifestyle and in the composition of her writing. One of Emily Dickinson's poems that has been analyzed as a poem of her depressed state of mind is "I Felt a Funeral in My Brain." In this poem, Dickinson explains the feelings that she had in her head and how she felt at the time.
I felt a funeral in my brain, and mourners to and fro kept treading till it seemed that sense was breaking through. And when they all were seated, a service like a drum kept beating till I thought my mind was going numb. And then I heard them lift a box and creak across my soul with those same boots of lead again. Then space began to toll, as all the heavens were a bell, and being but an ear, and I and silence some strange race, wrecked, solitary here. And then a plank in reason broke, and I dropped down and hit a world at every plunge, and finished knowing then.
Instead of trying to find where creativity comes from, which would be a challenging feat in itself, it is more practical to ask the question, what makes a person creative? Of course, one could contend that drugs and alcohol could be a major link to creativity, such as Jimi Hendrix and Jim Morrison. Some people argue that only happy people are able to be creative, but further studies have shown that people with mental illnesses such as depression tend to be extremely creative. Take Kurt Cobain for instance, former lead singer and guitarist of the 90s grunge band Nirvana. Cobain was diagnosed as having manic depression, or otherwise known as bipolar disorder, which ultimately led to his battle with drug addiction and his death. Throughout his life, he wrote many letters, journals, and songs for chart-topping albums, which skyrocketed his band from local obscurity to a worldwide household name. There are 4 theories as to why a person who has a depressive disorder or other mental illness can be extremely creative. The first theory is that being creative offers a certain amount of therapy. Often, a psychiatrist or psychologist will recommend their patients to write daily experiences down in a journal as a way of reflection. The second theory is that a person's depressive state of mind is used as a subject for their creativity, such as the aforementioned lives of Emily Dickinson and Kurt Cobain. A third theory is that a person can be completely encompassed by their mental illness that they lose any judgmental criticisms about their work. And lastly, creativity could be spawned by recovery processes from the mental illness itself. In other words, dramatic positive mood swings could trigger intense periods of creative thinking. Either way, there is much to be studied about the effects of creativity and feelings of sadness and gloom. Depression and other mental illnesses can be one of the most debilitating disorders that a person can have. It can affect the way a person lives, works, and socializes, and can even force friendships and relationships into unwelcome periods of frustration. Patience, time, and a willingness to defeat the mental demons are a key in a person's survival against any illness. It's also important to have faith, support, and motivation along with possible treatments of medicines and therapies. In the end, the connection between mental illnesses and bouts of creativity can't be denied, and it's unfortunate to think that it is easier to become creative under altered states of mind. It's also unfortunate that pain, sadness, and loneliness can spark waves of emotion and cause floods of creativity. With millions of Americans suffering from some sort of diagnosed mental illness, there should be plenty of creativity to go around.